Now, we have Aarthi next, who completed her Bachelor of Law at the University of Warwick and continued her LPC with Masters in Law, Business and Management at the University of Law. In addition to her commendable academic journey, she volunteered for many years at the Personal Support Unit, working in human rights as volunteer staff. Prior to this, very early on, she had shown her versatility outside of legal and political interests in her role as a teaching assistant at the Brain Train Tuition Centre and as an activity instructor years later at super camps. Aarthi participated actively in various roles at her university. To name a few, she was the Technology and Research Analyst and Mentor at the Warwick Think Tank Society and was also on the Commercial Negotiations Subcommittee at Warwick Law Society to display her passion and knowledge learned throughout her degree. Her impressive academic career has currently landed her a role at her present organisation as a trainee solicitor, where she has thus far set her focus on real estate and global loans. Could I please call upon Aarthi to tell us further?
Thank you, Vidya. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's event. I'd like to thank Lotus Caring Hands for organising it, and a special thanks to Uma Auntie for prepping and helping all the speakers today. So as Vidya said, I'm Aarthi, and I'm currently training to be a commercial solicitor. So commercial law, in a nutshell, is when we advise legal issues relating to business and commercial transactions. So if you think of commercial law as like the umbrella, overarching term, and then underneath are various subgroups and practice groups which stem from that. So this can include banking law, insolvency, tax, real estate, employment law, financial regulation. There's so many different types, and I'll touch on this briefly later. So going back a few years, I completed my A-levels in English literature, economics and mathematics. For those of you who are considering commercial law or law as a route, I really recommend an essay-based subject. As a commercial lawyer, effectively, you just decide how to interpret, apply and construct the law. And so any essay subjects, whether that's English, history, politics, can be really useful, as effectively you just improve your evaluative skills, your persuasive skills, and you decide how you're going to construct your written argument in the most effective way. I also personally found economics A-level really helpful. I feel like it gave me a good foundation for the business sphere, financial terms, and as a lawyer, you decide how you're going to advise your client against a constantly changing economic backdrop. So having an understanding of government intervention, trade policies, globalization, I personally found really useful. So I'm currently completing my training contract, which is effectively a 2-year program, and you do 4 different rotations. So I'm currently in global loans, as Vidya said, which is banking law, and I did my first rotation in commercial real estate. And at the end of the 2 years, you decide which of these 4 areas you want to specialize and qualify into. So after completing my A-levels, I then did my undergraduate in law at Warwick University, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's worth noting that for any of you who are considering applying to study law at university, you need to complete the LNAT, which is the Law National Aptitude Test, which I've completely forgotten about because it's been so many years. But a lot of London universities do ask for this, and it can be a bit daunting, but my advice for this would just be to practice. It's the type of test where once you've done a couple of questions and you're familiar with the format, it becomes a lot more manageable. So I just bought a revision guide for the LNAT, did a couple practice questions, self-marked it, and it's not as daunting as it might first seem. And the structure of it is just 42 multiple choice questions, and then you have an essay at the end. So something that you can really practice. So it was in my second year at Warwick where I started considering commercial law as a possible option, and I applied to a vacation scheme. So a vacation scheme is just a fancy word for an internship, which legal people like to use. It's a 2 to 3 week scheme, and you go to the law firm, they assess you, they give you work. It's also just a really good opportunity to meet interesting people in the legal field. And at the end, they assess you and they offer you a training contract. So it was in my final year when I received my training contract offer. I then completed my legal practice course with a master's in law, business and management. And this is a compulsory qualification that you have to complete in order to qualify as a solicitor. I won't go into that too much because it is now changing to, I think, the solicitor's qualifying exam. So for those of you in the room, we'll probably end up doing the new qualification. But if you have any specific questions about that, please ask me in the Q&A session. I also think it's really worth stressing that you do not need to do a law degree to pursue a career in law. And for those of you who do have an interest in a non-law degree, I'd say definitely pursue that. And you can always come back and do the conversion course later. I think about 50% of commercial trainees right now did a non-law degree. So the common ones are history, STEM, economics. And actually law firms really like hiring a mix of law students and non-law students because they want people who can think laterally, who can approach solutions and problems differently and come up with new ideas. So please don't think that you have to do a law degree to pursue it further. So you might be wondering what separates commercial law from all the other types of law out there. And to be honest, it's quite obvious. It's in the name. It's that commercial aspect. So what I mean by this is that your law degree and your law conversion will teach you the basics, like how to read cases, how to understand legislation, how to analyse the actual black letter law. But what really interested me was the external parts of that. So in commercial law, it's just as important to have an understanding of industries, sectors, and the different businesses, and how all these different practice areas can fit together in order to advise on a transaction. So just to give you a bit of context, if we take two household names, Vodafone and EE, two network providers that we all know, earlier this month they merged together, so their businesses effectively combined. So if we were going to look at this from a commercial law perspective, we'd have the corporate lawyers who would look at the structure of the deal and they'd advise on directors' duties or the rights of the shareholders in Vodafone and EE. From a banking law perspective or a capital markets law perspective, they might look at how are we going to fund this deal? Where's the money going to come from for the two companies to merge? From an employment perspective, obviously when there's mergers, it results in staff being let off. So the employment lawyers would look at that process. Tax lawyers would look at how can we structure and format this merger in the most tax efficient way. And if there's any assets involved, real estate lawyers would come into play. And competition lawyers, for example, would look at how this new company is now affecting the market share in the network operation industry as a whole. So I found it really interesting how all these teams are coming together, and it's very much a collaborative role, which leads me on to talking about the benefits, but also the challenges that come with this role. So like I said, I really liked the collaborative aspect, the fact that loads of lawyers are working together to get a deal over the line. This really improved my teamwork skills, my interpersonal skills. So if you are someone that at school likes working in group projects or at university, then this is definitely a role to consider. I also really like the direct client contact I have, so I find myself emailing, calling, talking to clients nearly every day. And it's definitely built my confidence, my interpersonal skills, my communication skills, and just, I think, generally learning how to develop long-lasting relations with people and clients is really important to have in any career you go into. The challenge, let me say, that comes with that is, like I think some people have touched on before, you can have some demanding clients, and effectively it's a service-based role, so you need to be available at all times for your clients, which sometimes leads to longer working hours. I'd say it is manageable, and when you have a good team and you enjoy the work, you don't feel it, but it's worth noting it's not your typical 9 to 5, 9 to 6 role. I also really like the international cross-border aspect of it. It's really exciting to be working with clients and lawyers from all across the world. And it also means that every day is slightly different. So for example, you might have a transaction with a Japanese lender, a borrower in Luxembourg, and an English loan document. And yeah, it just means that every day is slightly different. Again, the challenge that comes with working with lawyers in different jurisdictions is the time zone issue. So, for example, last week we assisted and advised some Japanese lenders, which led to some early starts because of the 9-hour time difference, I think. So again, it does come with some challenges along the way. So yeah, in terms of next steps, I think most of the speakers have already spoken to you about LinkedIn, the benefits of saying yes to everything, even you guys coming to this event, speaking to people. So I'd say just sort of going forward, depending on where you are right now, experience is the best thing that you can do, and it doesn't necessarily have to be legal experience. As Vidya said, I did summer jobs teaching and at summer camps, which I found really helped interpersonal skills, my communication skills, and where you can get legal experience, that's obviously just an added benefit. For those of you who are in university or going into another year at university, it's worth noting that applications for internships normally open at the end of August, beginning of September. So if you have a start now about thinking about what you want to do, researching, you put yourself in good stead for when those do open. And my second piece of advice, which hasn't been touched on, is just how you can build your commercial awareness organically. You don't want to be, the day before an interview, opening the Financial Times and trying to read through it. So one thing that I did in university, which is advice passed on to me, was think about how you best learn and how you digest information. I found, for me, podcast was really useful. It's really easy. You can just put it on in the background while you're getting ready for school or university. You can listen to it on your way to work. And one that I listen to is the Financial Times news briefing. It's literally just a 10-minute podcast, Monday to Friday, and it breaks down the biggest global business stories of the week. And then if there is anything in that you're interested in, you can look up further. So yeah, that's basically commercial law and my advice in a nutshell. But if you have any questions, then please come at the booths after. Thank you.